Today we are in part 3 of Knowing My Purpose. So in our first session, we talked about God's intention in creating the world, God's purpose. And then the second one, we spoke about how God gives us divine providence, which means that he's giving us clues and showing himself in the world to guide us. And Hashgacha Pratit can have to do with our own lives and where we are and what God is showing us. And it could also be things just about our own lives or things that happen to us. So we'll talk about that today, as well as the third part. So there's God's purpose. There is what we're talking about today is my knowing my own personal purpose, which has to do with my own decisions. And we spoke also about divine providence, in which God is connecting to us and showing us and giving us clues about what God wants from us. So God creates the world so that he could be revealed in the most hidden place with the least exposed godliness. Here you could live a life not knowing that there's God at all. This is the most hidden place. And God hides himself with a curtain of nature and materialism. So people think, well, that's what's real, and that's what's real, and you could touch this and touch that. That seems real. But to think about God, we need to connect. So how can we change our experience from concealment to revelation, to where we see that God is really here? And that has to do with our own effort. So how do we know where and how to make that effort? So our purpose is to elevate the world through God's Torah, one mitzvah at a time, one act of goodness and kindness at a time. So every act of goodness and kindness that we do changes the world. We don't always see that, but it's true. Sometimes I just had this experience where you meet someone that you haven't seen in years and they tell you, I remember what you said and it changed my life. And we've all had those kinds of experiences ourselves. So this is part of the divine providence that is activated by our own action, what we say or what we do. So Torah gives us the roadmap to help us align our unique role in unveiling the divinity with all things. So the Torah is telling us, do this, this will bring more godliness into the world. Don't do that, that will bring less godliness into the world, so don't do it. So the learning and commandments also give us intention-setting practices. We get up in the morning and we say, Moda Ani, we're recognizing that God is placing our soul back into our body. So that gives us an intention of living with soul. Inner dimension to Torah addresses the depths and destinies of each unique soul. Every person has our own purpose in our soul. The Alter Rebbe says, these acts of internal redemption, of connecting our inner world to God at all times, are essential components of our service to God. So recognizing that we're here to connect ourselves to God and bring godliness into the world changes everything. We don't just say stuff happens, I happen, whatever happens. We don't live like that. We have an intention and a purpose to live in a godly way. So Torah illuminates the path, the particular path of each person. So in Bereshit, in the first of the parshas at the beginning of the Torah, there's an experience that Adam has. First of all, he was supposed to do a mitzvah, which he did not do properly. And God and his consciousness goes down because of that. And so God asks him and Chava, Adam and Eve, where are you? Ayeka, where are you? And did God know where he was? Of course, God knew where he was. God is every place. God knows where we are. God is with us. God is in us. All there is God. But when God was coming to Adam and saying, Ayeka, where are you? He was asking not the question, oh, are you hiding behind that tree? But God was asking something else. And the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, he explains this, that Ayeka, where are you, is a call to every human being. Where are you in the world? What have you accomplished? You've been given a certain number of days. Where are you along your life's journey? What have you achieved so far in your mission in life? So Ayeka is saying, it's addressing each of us at every moment of our lives. Where are you? Where are you now? Where are you? And what are you up to? And so we need to know that God is always with us and seeing us and asking us, what's up with you? Where are you? So from the very first moment, God has prepared the way and arranged the right circumstances to bring life to you as part of a story that spans the entirety of creation. We are each part of a story that spans the entirety of creation. It's not just I'm me, but we're each part of this world and what God is bringing into the world. So each of us is essential to the world, and each of us has to do our share. Lubavitcher Rebbe says we are already at birth inherently, infinitely, and irrevocably valuable, worthy of love, and divine by design. I like that, divine by design. God loves us. God placed us into a world for a purpose. And we need to know that God loves us, has a purpose for us, and that nobody can do the purpose that we are here to do, that we are unique and uniquely loved. So every moment, every interaction, and everything has infinite purpose invested into it by the creator of all. So a person is an agent of God, a shaliach, an agent of God, here to help God build his work. And that person, each of us, is the best person to deal with the particular challenges he's faced with. He's given the right talents and abilities and failings to do so. So even some of our qualities that aren't so great are given to us as part of our challenges and part of what we have to work with. So our job is to embrace purpose and meaning into our daily lives. So what we're going to talk about today is discovering and activating our unique purpose. When all of our parts and potentials come together and transform us into being more potent than the sum of our parts. Each of us is whole, but working with the different parts of ourselves, with the different opportunities that we have to bring out who we are and what we're here to do. So how do we discover our unique purpose in the world? Busy world. Excuse me a moment while we... Machines are interesting. Okay. So Torah teaches us that God continues to direct the world throughout all time. So it's not God puts us into the world and there you are. We have our purpose, but God is always renewing us, recreating us every moment. It's not just plop, you're there. It's that God is always renewing, creating, recreating. So we're new in every moment. That's really important to know that. So that a person, in terms of our purpose, it's very easy to say, well, I made a mistake over there. I guess that was that. No, we need to say, I'm new now. I'm new in this moment. What can I do now? What is my purpose now? And not to get stuck in the past. So the Torah is teaching us that God is continuing to direct the world throughout all time. So God's guiding us by being involved in our lives at every moment. So this involvement is called divine providence, hashgacha pratit. And God is giving us hints that reveal that God is here and what is wanted from us. So we're going to talk about that today, the hints and what that has to do with our free choice. Now, every move of each individual creation has a place in the larger story of the entire creation. You never know what you're going to do that's going to make a difference, will make another difference, and all these people will be affected. And Lubavitcher Rebbe said, I've grown accustomed to searching for the hashgacha pratit, for the divine providence in every opportunity. So we are meant to be looking for that divine providence because we see God here. God is here guiding us and everything that surrounds us. So the person has to discover his strengths and abilities to accomplish his tasks. Now, one of the interesting clues, which I find very interesting for me, is that the Rebbe was saying for those trying to find their own personal mission and meaning, do not ask, how can I change the world? But how can I change my world? That's like stay in your lane. I need to do my part and leave the rest to God. So in saying, what can I do to make a difference in my world, then everything changes. So what are the obvious ways that God is guiding us by divine providence? So there are situations which are ours alone. So there's the life story of a person designed for him. So one is the purpose that he has, which is what we're talking about, how to discover that. Then is, who are you born to? Who are the parents you're given into? What's the place where you're born, which makes a huge difference. The time that you're born in, your upbringing and education, your environment. So different people are born to different people with different educations at different times and places, and that makes a difference in how they see life and how they're growing up. What your talents are, your character traits, your hobbies and interests, and what kind of divine providence has guided the person until he became self-directed and took a stand in life. All these things form the person. So this is something that we didn't consciously have any choice about. Now, God put us in the world at this time, in this situation, with these people in this world. But then there are opportunities which come up for work, for connections, and it's up to the person to choose to take or not take these options. So we could ask ourselves, how can I better my immediate surroundings, the needs and dreams of my family, friends, my community, my people? So what can I do to make a difference around me? What can I do to make a difference for my family, my friends, my community? And some people have bigger opportunities to affect more people, but we all can affect many, many people. We all have talents that we can and want to use. So our talent is also an invitation. It's possibly a directive from on high to use our God-given instrument to bring light and healing to the world. So we're brought to places, people, endeavors, and opportunities that are uniquely ours to uplift. And we can't underestimate the power of even a single individual. We never know the long-term impact of our one blessing, one teaching, one smile, one good deed. And we can affect the person that you're interacting with in ways that you can't imagine. And then what winds up happening is that there's a ripple effect, that when someone is not happy at that moment and you smile to them and you say, oh, it's so nice to see you, and they go, oh my gosh, somebody saw me. And then when they see somebody and the things that they do in the world are different because of your hello. So we also receive a teaching, a comment, which affects us greatly and stays with us. And I think that we can all think of something that somebody we've met and somebody says something and how that changed us. Now, there are a lot of ways to talk about this, and I hope to talk about this some more in the future. But I would like to talk about a specific person and look at his life and see the Hashgacha Pratis, the divine providence, and the choices he made and how that was actually life-changing and world-changing. So I'd like to look at the life of Viktor Frankl, a famous psychologist, at his talents, challenges, how divine providence guided him, and how he made choices that changed him and affected the world in a big way. Viktor Frankl was born in 1905, and he passed away in 1997. So that says something about when he was born. He was born in Vienna, and during war times, he was there. So he was always interested in the meaning of life. When he started to study psychology, and he made programs, this was as a young man, 16, 17, when he made programs that lowered youth suicide rates. And he corresponded with the other well-known people in psychology in Vienna, Sigmund Freud and Adler. But later, he didn't really agree with their way of looking at things, and so he broke away to create his own school of thought. It became not good in Europe, and after 1938, the Nazis annexed Austria, and he actually was given a visa to the United States. So he still could get out. But he struggled with this decision to leave. Now, this is very interesting. His parents were there. He was actually married to. His elderly parents were there, and it wasn't so simple for him. He didn't want to leave them. And now, at that time, the Nazis were destroying synagogues and all kinds of stuff. And not good stuff that they were doing, bad choices. Okay. And what happened was that there was a synagogue, and it had 10 commandments in concrete, and it was knocked down. And he found a piece of marble from that destroyed 10 commandments, and he looked at the piece, and he asked his father about it. What did it mean? And it said, honor your father and mother. So Frankl himself later wrote that this felt like an answer from heavens. Okay, now I just want to stop for one moment. Something happened, he found something, and it said, honor your mother and father. He felt, to him, this was a sign to remain with his parents. In other words, he took that as divine providence. He didn't have to find it. It could have said something else. But this was what it said when he was trying to decide what to do. So he made a decision, and he didn't use the visa. And he stayed there. Now, that's what I want to talk about is Frankl and how we see his activation of divine providence in his life, and he sees that it affects his choices and how he sees life and the world. And that's what we're talking about, knowing my purpose. But this was him knowing his purpose. And that moment reveals a core element of Frankl's philosophy, that meaning comes from responsibility. He was very interested in meaning. His later book is called Man's Search for Meaning. But he says it has to do with responsibility, that we choose a path not because it's easy or safe, but because it's right in light of our values. So we have to know where we're coming from, who are we, what's important to me. And of course, this is where Torah is teaching us godly values. And it's so interesting that what affected him was something from Torah, a commandment, honor your mother and your father. So by choosing to stay, Frankl used a kind of inner freedom. He chose his path deliberately. He didn't just react to fear. This is very important. He didn't react. He made a choice. This is very, very important to us, that we have to know the difference. But when we're fearful, that it's very important to pause. He went back and forth in his mind. I mean, who would want to stay there? But his parents didn't have a choice. And in the moment when he had this, what he considered a sign from God, it's like he stopped and he said, okay, this is my choice now. This is what I'm going to go with this. So we have to know that we have free choice. And that's really the third piece. There's God and God's purpose for us, God's divine providence, where God is guiding us specifically. and our free choice and how we use our choice. So now what happened was that Frankl was put in concentration camp. He actually was in a few concentration camps. But what he did was, so you have to know that he was a professor until he wasn't allowed to be a professor, but he was a professor, and he had a manuscript. And that manuscript he'd been working on it for years. This was his intellectual work on what was really the outline of his new psychological system called logotherapy. And the Rebbe had a lot of respect for his work. And he kept it hidden in the lining of his coat, hoping that he could protect it. In other words, that was the most valuable thing to him. He had already lost his ability to teach in university, all the things that were going on in his house, his abilities, the things that he had saved and taken care of, he didn't have. But that booklet, his manuscript, was the one thing that he felt identified with and that he could work on. So when he arrived at Auschwitz, the prisoners were ordered to surrender all their possessions. And the guards ripped the coat off his back, and his manuscript, his pages of ideas and dreams and hard work were gone in an instant. And in that moment, Frankl said that he felt like his entire life had been taken. Not only his freedom, but also the work that gave it meaning. So there he was at the bottom. Everything felt like it was gone. And what was he going to do? So divine providence comes again. A while after, Frankl was given a different coat from the pile of discarded clothing. And in that pocket, he found something unexpected, a single torn page from a Hebrew prayer book. And the prayer contained the Shema Yisrael, the central Jewish declaration of faith. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So what he thought was what he could hold on to was taken away. But God gave him something else. Remember, connect, there's one God, one God. So this was something that, again, when we get messages or when we have experience, we could say, what do I need that for? Or we could say, what do I need that for? Why is God sending me this? And so he interpreted this. So you see, he's a person who looks at what's happening and says, what can I do with this? What does it mean? As an existential challenge. His manuscript, his intellectual legacy was gone. And in its place was a page that was saying to him, this is how he understood it. Don't just stick with theory that's in your booklet. Live with the reality of faith and meaning. Live with what you're teaching. Make it a reality, even in the harshest imaginable conditions. Live it. So he felt that this was his chance to live what he had been teaching. That was the message, that's how he understood the message of there's one God. Now, live it. So this encounter shaped his resolve in the camp. And what he did was he helped many people in the camps to find a positive meaning for which to live. Man's search for meaning. And that's probably what he was also doing when he was 16 or 17 and making programs to help people not commit suicide. So he felt like his ability, his desire was to help people find positive meaning for which to live. But he looked at himself. So we know that what was going on there wasn't a lot of food, and there was work and labor, and it was awful, loneliness. And he was disgusted by looking at everything in the lowest way. He said, that's what I'm thinking about. That's who I am, thinking all the time about food, about fear. And he decided that he had to change that. Okay, now this is a very interesting how he handled this. And we have to think about this in terms of our own free choice and our own decisions. He forced his thoughts to go in another direction. The easiest thing was to think about food, about lack, about the horror around him. That was the obvious. But he said he doesn't want to be reduced to that way of looking at life. So he forced his thoughts to go into another direction. And then what happened was that by doing that, he rose above the situation, above the sufferings of the moment. And he says in his book, and I observed them as if they were already of the past. So he got himself an overview by getting out of the way he was thinking. And that's something that we can do with our freedom of thought. This is also in living Torah and learning Torah. And like Frankel said, I need to just not just learn it, I need to live it. So how can I use this right now? So one day, he was still in Auschwitz, he imagined himself, remember, he's working with thoughts, moving away from what was going on. And he imagined himself standing in front of a university classroom, teaching logotherapy. And he was also teaching what he was learning from being in the camps. So in other words, what was he seeing? What was he learning that he could use in his logotherapy? So he wasn't actually going to just be working with his manuscript and what he was up to. He was going to go further, and he was going to learn more in his experience in the camps. But from then on, he had an objective stance on his day-to-day life. So in other words, it's not just, oh my gosh, but like, what's going on? What do I see? What's happening? And he realized that some people were giving up quickly. And he's thinking, why are they giving up so quickly? And he said, they feel they don't have a reason to live. And other people somehow found a reason to live. So he realized from what he's watching that if he survived, he could rewrite from memory his manuscript with more of what he saw and more of what he was able to accomplish. And he did that, and that became the basis of Man's Search for Meaning. Highly recommended to read this. Now, that pocket exchange, manuscript for Shema, became a living metaphor for the book's core message. Even when a person is stripped of everything, you can still choose your stance toward life and hold on to the meaning that no one can take from you. In other words, no matter what's going on, no matter the situation, no matter what you wish you had but you don't have, no matter how those things went that maybe you could have done something different, no. Where are you now? What meaning can you find now? How can you look at life now? And nobody can take that free will away from you. So in the camps, he noticed that people could be stripped of everything except the freedom to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That every person has the choice to choose his attitude, and that is up to us. So no matter, we were talking about the divine providence of who you're born to. Sometimes these parents are developed people that bring you up in an amazing way. Sometimes they're not so developed people. They don't bring you up in such an amazing way, but you're not stuck. That you can recognize what you need in order to look at life in a different way. As we saw, that he's pushed his thoughts to, okay, so that's how I was raised. What can I do? And what can I do now? I don't have to do it the way they did it. I can do it in a way that is right for me. And what is right for me? So that we can work with what we got and this situation. So this became, that you can work with your attitude, became a central theme. That a life worth living is often anchored in love and service, even if it comes with risk or loss. Frankel knew that meaning is possible even in suffering, but he felt If your suffering is tied to a purpose, then it is meaningful. So many examples of that. So many examples of that. That somebody is in your life who's not in good shape, and it's so not pleasant. But what is it? And that just the fact that that's the situation is very difficult. But what is the right thing for you to do? How can you say, this is mine to make a difference, it's not mine to make a difference? What is the right choice for me to make at this purpose, even though it's awful that that person is so difficult or whatever they are, but it's your choice, what you can do and what you feel is yours to do. So life is not about avoiding pain. It's about finding the why that makes the how worth enduring. Finding the why that makes the how worth enduring. So Viktor Frankl wasn't just surviving in the camps. He was quietly practicing logotherapy under the most extreme conditions. And he was helping fellow prisoners anchor themselves to some personal purpose so that they wouldn't give up. When a person finds a personal purpose in a situation, then they don't give up. When they feel they have no purpose, they don't know what to do. But we can find the purpose. I'm helping someone else. I'm making a difference to someone. Whatever it is, as small as it could be, I'm saying a prayer. I'm connecting to God, even though I don't know if I'm helping anybody else. But I'm saying a prayer. I'm learning some Torah. I'm integrating it into who I am. And we never know how we're going to utilize these things. But we need to find our way to go forward, grounded in purpose. During his time in the Nazi death camps, he could see how some prisoners were able to find a tiny sense of purpose, and that helped them to maintain a positive outlook even there. There was one person who was kind of giving up, but he worked in the kitchen, peeling potatoes. But somehow he was able to take some of those peels and bring them to people, and that had some nutrition. And so he said, what am I doing? Putting peels in my pocket? What's the point? But Viktor Frankl said to him, you're giving people energy to live another day. You are making a difference. This is what you are here for. This is why you are placed there. Continue doing what you're doing. Keep on going. And that person suddenly felt like, I'm making a difference. I have a purpose. Every peel I can save can make a difference. And so he kept on going forward. And this helped people see themselves not just as victims, but as participants in a meaningful human story. So we are not victims, we're participants in a meaningful human story. And sometimes the things that we do help us to grow further so that we'll use it as we're going along in life. So how did Frankl help people to choose life? So Frankl's approach always started with questions, not lectures. So he would ask them questions like, who is waiting for you? Or what is waiting for you? They didn't always know. What work or duty is yours alone to finish? Like in Viktor Frankl, he understood that bringing logotherapy into the world was something that nobody else could do. This was his understanding, and this is his to finish and bring out into the world. And then he would ask them, how would you bear this suffering in a way that would make sense if someone you loved were watching you? He often thought about his wife, who actually was killed in the camps. But if she's watching me, what does she think? And sometimes we think about that. We can also think, God is watching me. What does God think? Is this what God would like to see from me? What's what God wants? And these conversations were short. How can we find meaning? And there were a lot of stories about these things, there was one person who said that he had a son who was in another country. And Viktor Frankl said to him, you need to take care of your health and your life, because when you come out, your son needs a father. You need to be there as a father for him. And then he thought he had a purpose and it was worthwhile to live. Now, these were conversations that were short. Sometimes they were whispered during labor or in barracks, but they helped people replace hopelessness with a concrete purpose, even if it was small, because you don't always know what's small. Those potato peels helped people to live. Seemed like potato peel. You need a potato peel. Okay, fine, have a potato peel. No, that was the strength that they needed to go further. They got something extra. Something came to them, and they realized they were being helped from above through this person, giving them more energy. So in Frankl's view, we are unique beings driven by a will to meaning. That's who we are. We have a will to meaning. What is my meaning? What am I here for? And we have free choice and the capacity for transcendence. Now, this is interesting. This has become very famous understanding, but it is from Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response is our power to choose our response. In other words, don't just react. You have a stimulus and then a response, but there's a space between what happened or what somebody said and what you're going to choose. And this is the place of our freedom to choose. That space between stimulus and response is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So the response that we make, what we choose to do, is part of our growth and freedom. So Frankl came out of the camps. His family was killed. But he worked. See, it's very interesting. You can say, well, why did he stay to help his parents if they were all killed? No. God was guiding him. This is where you need to go. And it turns out that God was guiding him to develop his logotherapy in real life and to help people with what they're to do. So in living his logotherapy and helping people with logotherapy, it changed his theory into something that was real, and he developed it. And this is all based on Frankl's idea of the human being's unique ability to make choices and pursue his own meaning. So when he came out of the camp, he was able to teach again, and he wrote books. But the psychology world, the Freudians and the Adlerians, completely different way of working at things. Wasn't about free choice at all. They were giving him a hard time. They were very critical of him, and he was feeling despair, and he thought of giving up. So that's another very interesting thing, because very often people find themselves affected by what other people think. Somebody put out a work, and I asked her, how are the reviews? And she said, I don't care. Not important to me what they think. She put out her best, and it didn't matter to her what other people thought about it. So he was struggling because at that point, he was being affected by the psychology world. Seems completely separate. Divine providence. There was a woman from Vienna in New York, and she went to visit the Lubavitcher Rebbe. This is some years after the camps. And she said that she's thinking of going to Vienna to visit. And the Rebbe asked her to come to him if she would actually make that trip. So she decided to do it. And she came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked her to visit Frankl. Now, it's surprising. You would say the Rebbe knows about Frankl. The Rebbe knows about a lot of things. But his work was already coming out. And the Rebbe saw how Frankel's work was essential to the world. Instead of thinking of yourself as stuck in your desires, he said, no, you can move your thought, go to a place of freedom. And so he said, go to visit Frankel. So she did. She found him. She knocked on the door and she met him. So she brought him a message from a Rebbe, a young Hasidic master who he didn't know. He never heard of him before. This was around 1960. And this was it. Please send Dr. Frankel my regards and pass the following message on to him. So you have to remember, Frankel was very depressed at that time. He was ready to give it up. He actually had a sister in Australia. He was thinking, give it up, move there, forget about it, done. And give the following message to him that I said, to Lubavitcher Rebbe, that he should be strong and continue his work with complete resolve. No matter what, he should not give up. If he remains strong and committed, he will certainly prevail. This is again divine providence. Something comes seemingly from the outside and says, don't give up. Keep focused, do what you're doing, and it will work. And this message from the Rebbe strengthened him, and he decided not to give up. It's actually, I understand that he started to put on tefillin after that. So this affected him. So he continued his practice as a psychiatrist and went back to his work, but he had new motivation and vigor and optimism. And in 1959, Frankel's book, Man's Search for Meaning, what he had worked on, was translated into English, and it became a bestseller and a classic psychiatric text. And this brought him out into the world. And there's many, many other books. Scott Peck's Road Less Traveled, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, many, many other books are variations of Viktor Frankl's perspective. And Frankel became the director of Vienna Neurological Polyclinic, a position he had for 25 years. He gave lectures in which he explained his central thoughts on meaning, resilience, and the importance of embracing life even in the face of great adversity. You have to embrace life, even though it seems like things are not happening the way I would like. And he's talking about he was in Auschwitz. But embrace life and keep going forward. And this, he eventually wrote a book called Yes to Life in Spite of Everything. And the Library of Congress lists Man's Search for Meaning as one of the 10 most influential books in America. So Frankel, doing his own work, has affected the world and how people think. And he knew that our inner value has to be anchored in higher things. And when we do this, we can't be shaken by outer life. What does God want from me? What can I do to make a difference in my life here that will really be what God wants from me and what I'm here to do? So, do we have any control over our circumstances, or are we just the product of our circumstances? And there are many choices that we could make every day. We may not be able to choose our circumstances, but anyone can decide what will become of themselves mentally or spiritually. So we can retain our dignity, no matter the circumstance. So the manner in which we live in our challenges in life, how we choose to accept our suffering, if we are to suffer, is a choice that we will never be without. I remember many years ago, somebody told me about Alcoholics Anonymous and about the program that goes with people who are affected by alcoholics. And they wanted me to know what it was about. And so I went to a meeting. And there was a woman there that was saying how awful her husband was, so awful, and how her life was so awful. She was constantly thinking about her husband, who was an alcoholic. So I couldn't resist. And that's, again, a little bit of distance to see what's going on, because that's what I was there for. And I went up to her and I asked her, how many years have you been divorced? And she said, 25 years. That means that she wasn't married to an alcoholic anymore. But in her mind, she stayed stuck to the past for an additional 25 years. She could have said, I hope he's working it out, but that's not mine to work out. Now, what is my life? So even in difficult situations, we have to make opportunities, find opportunities to create meaning in our lives. We can say, this is good enough. I'm going to work with this right now. Potato peels. And when we ask, what is the meaning of life? We should really be asking what life can expect from us, not the other way around. In other words, what can I do here? Expecting life to give us meaning is not the thing. We have to look for meaning. And this is where our free will is. What can I do? So this is, we choose how to choose life in any situation. That's what we have to do. And one thing that helps people is to look into the future. Look into the future and say, how would I like this to work out? What is mine to do? Like he imagined himself standing on the podium in a university. So this is, we have to, in a certain way, sometimes set ourselves aside and say, what is the task or deed that I can do and what my attitude has to be here? And Frankl said, those that have meaning, that have worth and purpose, find happiness. Because when we do something even small, giving somebody a potato peel and their eyes light up and you say, thank you, that can give a person a sense of meaning. So, and then they can be happy. So our freedom is in the choosing what to do with our lives and how we respond to the situations that arise. Rebbe said many times, no, we shouldn't ask what I need or want from life, but why was I sent here? What is God's plan for me? Where am I most needed? And how can I best serve in the place and the way that was designed for me specifically? So we have to ask ourselves, what am I good at? What can I do? What can I do in this moment? What is God sending me to do? So we're asking ourselves, what is my life's purpose? And when God gives a person a single day, it means that they have not concluded their mission in life. So we need to rise to the occasion. What does God want from me right now? So most lives don't consist of one mission alone, but of various divinely appointed tasks, some of which we look for, and some come from circumstances beyond our control that are sent to us by God. So every day, there can be a new mission. It's a new day. And some are things that are obviously, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And some of them come from circumstances that have nothing to do with me. But it's all sent by God. So every day is a new day, filled with the opportunity to choose our attitudes and our actions. And we're here to live up to our divine potential and give our all to that, to every day an opportunity that's given by God to bring the world one step closer to its ultimate redemption. There's more to learn about and talk about in terms of knowing our purpose. But this is so essential. Somehow, God is bringing us to where it's going to be good for us. But then we have to choose the good.